The story of the Nephilim is an esoteric topic that many are not aware of. There are hints of their existence in the Bible and in other ancient Semitic and Ethiopian texts such as the Book of Enoch. There are also hints of them in every old mythology around the world and in art and legend. They were said to be cruel, and they incurred the wrath of an invisible sky god named Jehovah because of their behavior. What did they do? Where did they come from? Where are they now, and are they coming back? What was the physical nature of them and the physical nature of their fathers? The Nephilim were said to be an evil race of giant half-breeds made from the union of fallen angels and human women. What they did and who their fathers were will be revealed in this documentary by looking at multiple ancient books and texts and art and mythology to put the pieces of this puzzle together. From the Bible, when people began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also after, and the sons of God went on to the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. They were the heroes of old, warriors of renown. There are several versions of the Bible. Some state that the angels, the fallen angels or watchers, had gone on to human women to produce the Nephilim. Other versions of the Bible specifically state that they had intercourse with human women to produce these half-breeds. This breeding occurred during the days of Noah. The flood was a punishment to wipe out the genetic bloodlines of these evil Nephilim. There is a small amount of information given in Genesis that describes this wrath of Jehovah. Here are some of the passages. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humans was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. Genesis 6:8. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. Genesis 7:6. For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Matthew 16:27. When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign of your coming and at the end of the age? Matthew 24:3. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Matthew 24:7. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see that the Son of Man is coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Matthew 24:30. For as the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Matthew 24:37. Just as it was in the days of Noah, so also will it be in the days of the Son of Man. Luke 17:26. We can find out quite a bit about who these Nephilim and fallen angels or watchers were in the Ethiopian book of Enoch and out of the Loeb Library that originated out of Harvard. Let's start with the book of Enoch, the Ethiopian version. There are 3 versions of the book of Enoch. The book of Enoch that came out of Ethiopia has quite a bit more information, in my opinion, about who these Nephilim were and who the watchers or fallen angels were. Let's start by reading what they did. In those days when the children of man had multiplied, it happened that there were born unto them handsome and beautiful daughters, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw them and desired them, and they said to one another, Come, let us choose wives for ourselves from among the daughters of man, and beget us children. And Semyaz, being their leader, said unto them, I fear that perhaps you will not consent that this deed should be done, and I alone will become responsible for this great sin. But they all responded to him, Let us all swear an oath, and bind every one among us by a curse, not to abandon the suggestion, but to do the deed. Then they all swore together and bound one another by the curse. And they were altogether 200. And they descended into Ardos, which is the summit of Hermon, and they called the mount Armon, for they swore and bound one another by a curse. And their names are as follows: Samyaz, the leader of Arakeb, Ramael, Tam-el, Ram-el, Dan-el, Ezequiel, Baraquel, Az-el, Armoros, Batar-el, Anan-el, Zaquel, Sasomasbuel, Kestar-el, Tur-el, Yamayol, and Araziel. These are the chiefs of tens, and all the others with them. But there is more in the book of Enoch that we must take a look at. It states, And they took wives unto themselves, and everyone respectively chose one woman for himself. And they began to go on to them, and they taught them magical medicine, incantations, the cutting of roots, and taught them about plants. And the women became pregnant and gave birth to great giants, whose heights were 300 cubits. These giants consumed the produce of all the people until the people detested feeding them. So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish, and their flesh was devoured the one by the other, and they drank blood. And then the earth brought an accusation against the oppressors. And Azazel taught the people the art of making swords and knives and shields and breastplates. And he showed to their chosen ones bracelets, decorations, shadowing of the eyes with antimony, ornamentation, the beautifying of the eyelids, all kinds of precious stones, and all coloring tinctures and alchemy. And there were many wicked ones, and they committed adultery and erred, and all their conduct became corrupt. And Masras taught incantation and the cutting of roots, and Armoros the resolving of incantations, and Baraquel astrology, and Kokar-el the knowledge of signs, and Tame-el taught the seeing of the stars, And Azrael taught the course of the moon as well as the deception of man. And the people cried, and their voice reached unto heaven. Then Michael, Seraphel, and Gabriel observed carefully from the sky, and they saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all the oppression being wrought upon the earth. And they said to one another, The earth from her empty foundation has brought a cry of their voice unto the gates of heaven. And now, O holy ones of heaven, the souls of people are putting their case before you, pleading, Bring out judgment before the Most High. And they said to the Lord of the potentates, For he is the Lord of lords, and the God of gods, and the King of kings, and the seat of his glory stands throughout all the generations of the world. Your name is holy and blessed and glorious throughout the whole world. You have made everything, and with you is the authority for everything. Everything is naked and open before your sight, and you see everything, and there is nothing which can hide itself from you. You see what Azazel has done, how he has taught all forms of oppression upon the earth, and they revealed eternal secrets, which are performed in heaven and which man learn. Moreover, Samyaz, to whom you have given power to rule over his companions, cooperating, they went in unto the daughters of the people on earth, and they laid together with them, with those women, and defiled themselves, and revealed to them every kind of sin. As for the women, they gave birth to giants, to the degree that the whole earth was filled with blood and oppression. And now, behold, the Holy One will cry, and those who have died will bring their suit up to the gate of heaven. Their groaning has ascended into heaven, and they could not get out from before the face of the oppression that is being wrought on the earth. And you know everything, even before it came to existence. And you see the thing, but you do not tell us what is proper for us, that we may do regarding it. And then spoke the Most High, the Great and Holy One, and he sent Azrael to the son of Lamech, saying, Tell him in my name, hide yourself, and reveal to them the end of what is coming, for the earth and everything will be destroyed. And the deluge is about to come upon all the earth, and all that is in it will be destroyed. And now instruct him in order that he may flee, and his seed will be preserved for all generations. And secondly, the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and throw him into the darkness. And he made a hole in the desert which was in Dudael, and cast him there. He threw on top of him rugged and sharp rocks, and he covered his face in order that he may not see light, and in order that he may be sent into the fire on the great day of judgment, and give life to the earth, which the angels have corrupted, and he will proclaim life for the earth, and that he is giving life to her. And all the children of the people will not perish through the secrets of the angels, which they taught to their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted by Azazel, teaching of his own actions, and write upon him all sin. And to Gabriel the Lord said, Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of adultery, and destroy the children of adultery, and expel the children of the watchers from among the people, and send them against one another, so that they may be destroyed in the fight. For length of days have they not. They will beg you everything for their fathers on behalf of themselves, because they hope to live an eternal life. They hope that each one of them will live a period of 500 years. And to Michael, God said, Make known to Samyaza and the others who are with him, who fornicated with women, that they will die together with them in their defilement. Now, it's interesting that 300 cubits is allegedly 450 feet. I don't believe that these giants were that tall. But I do believe from research based on skeletons that were found in ancient mounds that these giants were anywhere from 8 to 12 feet tall. And I do believe that their fallen angel watcher fathers were Caucasoid and just as tall, and that they came from the lost Atlantean Empire. To prove this out, I'm going to read some more passages from Enoch, and then I'm going to show you that the fallen angel Barakwel, who taught astrology, is the equivalent to the Greek Iapetus. Iapetus was a titan and the brother of Cronus. Those of you who are familiar with my Hidden Human Story books and research know that I've already proven out that the Abrahamic God, Yahweh, is Cronus, and the Abrahamic God, Jehovah, is Zeus. And I will go through that proof in this documentary to reiterate. So let's take a look at more of this book of Enoch. What we're going to find out is that the giants who came from the fallen angels were put inside the earth. The fallen angels and other angels were frightening to Enoch, but he described them as Snow White. They had an intricate knowledge of the heavenly bodies and shared some of that knowledge with Enoch. They took Enoch up with them in a wind vehicle. Now that sounds very reminiscent of UFOs or spaceship or flying craft. This is not the first time that flying craft are discussed in ancient texts. We have flying chariots in all of the ancient Greek and Roman mythology. We have Vimanas in Hinduism. We have flying chariots in Nordic mythology as well. So let's read a few more passages from the book of Enoch. But now the giants who are born from the union of spirits and the flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, because their dwelling shall be upon the earth and inside the earth. And they lifted me up into one place where there were the ones like the flaming fire, and when they so desire, they appear like men. And they took me into a place of whirlwind in the mountain. The top of its summit was reaching into heaven. And Uriel said to me, here shall stand in many different appearances the spirits of the angels, which have united themselves with women. They have defiled the people and will lead them in error, that they will offer sacrifices to the demons as unto gods, until the great day of judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are finished. And their women, whom the angels have led astray, will be peaceful ones. So I, Enoch, I saw the vision of the end of everything alone, and none among human beings will see as I have seen. And I saw the sons of the holy angels walking upon the flame of fire. Their garments were white, and their overcoats, and the light of their faces was like snow. And I saw countless angels, 100,000 times 100,000, 10,000,000 times 10,000,000 encircling that house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are in heaven above go in and out of the house. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, Phanuel, and numerous other holy angels that are countless. With them is the antecedent of time. His head is white and pure like wool, and his garment is indescribable. I fell on my face, my whole body mollified, and my spirit transformed. Now let's look at this passage about Noah. He is compared to the angels because he is as white as snow and has some red or rosiness in his skin color, and his hair is white. And after some days, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore him a son. And his body was white as snow and red as a rose, the hair of his head as white as wool, and his diadema beautiful. And as for his eyes, when he opened them, the whole house glowed like the sun. Rather, the whole house glowed even more exceedingly. And when he arose from the hands of the midwife, he opened his mouth and spoke to the Lord with righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled, and went to Methuselah his father, and he said to him, I have begotten a strange son. He is not like an ordinary human being, but he looks like children of the angels of heaven to me. His form is different, and he is not like us. His eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his face glorious. It does not seem to me that he is of me, but the angels, and I fear that a wondrous phenomenon may take place upon the earth in his days. Now I'm going to read a passage from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's the Vision of Amram. In my vision, the vision of the dream, and there were two figures arguing over me and saying, and holding a great dispute over me. So I asked them, How is it that you have authority over me? They said, We rule and have authority over the human race. And they said to me, Which one of us? I lifted my eyes and saw one of them, whose appearance was dreadfully frightening. His clothing was multicolored and very dark. And I saw another, and he was pleasant in his appearance, and his face was laughing, and he was covered in white. That was the vision of Amram. And Amram is the father of Moses. Now it's interesting because I have seen other translations in which the frightening entity or person over this Amram character was described as a serpent. So we are not quite sure what their true appearance is. I do want to point out that all humans have some hue to their skin color. Even if you're a white person, you do have a tan color. Even a very, very pale white person has some color to it. It is interesting to note that the royalty of Europe at one point wore a white paint or makeup to make themselves look snow white. It was called Venetian cerus, or spirits of Saturn. Here is a picture of Elizabeth I of England, who was wearing Venetian cerus at the time. Now this makeup contained lead, and it caused lead poisoning, so they stopped wearing it eventually. Here's another picture of Elizabeth I called the Rainbow Portrait. And if you look on her sleeve, on her left arm, there's a serpent. I'm pointing this out because the serpent imagery goes hand in hand with all of these angels, fallen or not. It goes hand in hand with many of the gods and goddesses of old around the world. It's associated with the wise Nagas of Hinduism lore. It's associated with the angel who deceived Eve. And I'm going to give you that angel's name who deceived Eve in the Garden of Eden in a moment. Going back to the book of Enoch, we learn a lot more about the fallen angels or watchers. Here is what he wrote. After this judgment they shall frighten them and make them scream, because they have shown this knowledge of secret things to those who dwell on the earth. Now behold, I am naming the names of those angels. These are their names. The first of them is Samyaz, the second Aristogaques, the third Armin, the fourth Kokbael, the fifth Tur-El, the sixth Rumiel, the seventh Daniel, the eighth Nequel, the ninth Baraquel, the 10th Azazel, the 11th Armaros, the 12th Betrael, the 13th Basasel, the 14th Hananel, the 15th Tur-El, the 16th Sipwisiel, the 17th Yeter-El, the 18th Tumael, the 19th Tur-El, the 20th Rumel, and the 21st Azazel. These are the chiefs of their angels, their names, their centurions, their chiefs over 50s, and their chiefs over 10s. The name of the first is Yequan. He is the one who misled all the children of the angels, brought them down upon the earth, and perverted them by the daughters of the people. The second was named Asbael. He is the one who gave the children of the holy angels an evil counsel and misled them so that they would defile their bodies by the daughters of the people. The third was named Gader-El. This one is he who showed the children of the people all the blows of death, who misled Eve, who showed the children of the people all the blows of death, such as the shield, the breastplate, and the sword for warfare, and all the other instruments of death to the children of the people. Through their agency, death proceeds against the people who dwell upon the earth from that day forevermore. The fourth is named Pineme. This one demonstrated to the children of the people the bitter and the sweet, and revealed to them all the secrets of their wisdom. Furthermore, he caused the people to penetrate the secret of writing and the use of ink and paper on account of this matter. There are many who have erred from eternity of eternity until this very day. For human beings are not created for such purposes, to take up their beliefs with pen, to maintain pure and righteous lives. Death, which destroys everything, would have not touched them, had it not been through their knowledge by which they shall perish. Is he who revealed to the children of the people the various flagellations of all evil womb, so that it may be crushed, the flagellations of the soul, snake bites, sunstrokes, the son of the serpent, whose name is Tabata, and this is the number of Kasb-El, the chief executor of the oath which he revealed of the holy ones while he was still, to disclose to him his secret name, so that he would memorize this secret name of his, so that he could call it up in an oath, in order that he shall tremble before it and the oath. And he then revealed these to the children of the people, and all the hidden things, and this power of this oath, for it is the power and strength itself. The evil one placed this oath in Michael's hand. So there you are. The death of humans came about because this fallen watcher called Gar-Der-El, spelled Gader', introduced via Eve all of the ways to kill people. The shield, the breastplate, and the sword for warfare. That is how death came upon to humans, through murder and warfare. So it is not Satan, but this fallen watcher certainly is illustrated as a serpent being in the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. This information is part of the book of Enoch, which was not included in the Bible, and is part of the pseudepigrapha, the books that never made it into the Bible. It was forbidden to have access to this book by penalty of death until not so long ago. And as I said, there's 3 versions of it, but the book of Enoch via the Ethiopian version, to me, gives a lot of information versus the other 2 books. One is a Slavic book and one is a Jewish book of Enoch. So what you have are these snow white angels that are giving a certain amount of information, such as herbs, warfare, some medicines, knowledge of the heavenly bodies, and makeup, a couple other things, writing. And they mated with these women and created these giant offspring who abused humans in most despicable ways and included cannibalism of humans. So let's continue on and show how this relates to Greek mythology and all mythologies around the world. To give you a background on how I came to the conclusions that I did, I'll tell you that as a child, I knew that there were connections between Egypt and Mesoamerica long before other people began to suspect that. In school, I was told that there were no pre-Columbian travels from the Old World to the New World. I knew this was wrong. When I grew up, I had a mainstream job, but this interest never died, and so I began on my own personal quest to learn about many cultures and mythologies and history. And after years and years of ancient mythology comparisons and going to places, I began to write a series of children's books called The Library Kids. And it's an interesting little story about children that go around the world and learn about history and mythology and have an adventure. But when I started to do this book, I fell into some books that are very esoteric. They're books on ancient mythology written about 2,000 years ago or more by Roman and Greek scholars. One is also written by an Egyptian scholar. As I began to fall into these books, most of them out of a esoteric library called the Loeb Library that originated out of Harvard University and created by a German Jewish American banker named James Loeb. I began to realize that there was a story in there that has never been told, and that is the story of what I term the Chronides. The Chronides are of those relating to Zeus. Zeus is the father of the gods. In Greece, my understanding is they call him Dio. In Roman, they call him Jupiter. You will realize after reading my books that he has many names across the globe, such as Othin in Nordic mythology, Dagda in Celtic mythology, Inti in Incan mythology, and many, many other names, even Enki in Sumerian mythology. The stories that I began to read about in these old books began to tell me the story of this family. There was a timeline in these books from anywhere from 12,000 to 25,000 years ago from today. That timeline was given. The story of what happened to them, and that they in fact traveled the whole world to spread their knowledge and agricultural cults, is within those books. There's even a Phoenician scholar named Sanchonathan, whose book comes out of the British Library, that is very informative of what happened to this family. After I wrote these children's books and stumbled into this story, I began creating a book series called the Hidden Human Story Series that is geared for adults, because these ancient stories are very salacious and violent and not appropriate for children. However, every person on this planet should know about those books and what's in them. For over 10 years now, I've been writing and self-publishing. Prior to that, I'd say at least 25 years I've been actively researching ancient mythologies and anthropology on my own. The books that I found bring all mythologies together, and I have created a theory called the Methodological Unification theory that states that all of your mythologies and current day Abrahamic religions and Hinduism are all about the same group of people, whom I call the Chronides, that lived over 12,000 years ago, that survived the second and third final destruction of Atlantis, and traveled the world to resettle it and re-civilize it. Members of the family were cruel. A certain number of the Titans, including Zeus's father, Cronus, were incredibly cruel. They instituted human sacrifice, even of their own children, to control the people. I have written extensively in over 15 books and counting in regards to the story of this family. I have websites available, blogs available, a YouTube channel available, and as I said, over 15 books and counting. This story of the Chronides is incredibly important because you will see that Abrahamic religion which includes all of it, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, even Satanism, Mormonism, whatever, are all about this Chronide family. The identity of this god and his family was deliberately removed by the priestcraft to control the people and to maintain their dominance on the information. Hinduism is also about the Chronides. In my research, not only will I prove out that Dionysus was Osiris, but he was Krishna too, and had many other names as well. He did campaigns, military campaigns into India. The lost city of Krishna contains many gates, just as the city that Dionysus Osiris built in ancient Egypt had. So how does this fit into the Nephilim? Well, I want to read some passages and you will soon understand. As I said, I'm going to show you that the fallen angel watcher Baraquiel, who taught astrology, is the same as the Greek titan Iapetus. Now let's start with the Roman scholar Valerius Maximus from his memorable Deeds and Sayings, 1000 Tales from Ancient Rome. He wrote, "The Jews had tried to corrupt Roman values with their cult of Jupiter Sabazius, so the praetor forced them to go back to their home. Cornelius Hispanus expelled the Chaldeans from the city and ordered them to leave Italy within 10 days to prevent them from making money out of their foreign science. The Jews had tried to pass their religion on to the Romans, so Hispanus expelled them from the city and demolished their private altars in all public places. The Senate decided that the temples of Isis and Serapis should be demolished, but none of the workers dared to touch the temples. The consul, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, took off his official striped toga, grabbed an axe, and smashed in the doors of the temple." Now, Jupiter Sabazius is Zeus. Here is a stone relief with Zeus Sabazius on a horse facing towards the right and holding a thunderbolt. To the right, a tree in which there is a serpent and an eagle. This is from the British Museum. So now you have a connection to Greek mythology. The Jews brought the cult of Jupiter Sabazius, or their version of their cult of Zeus, to Italy. And the Romans didn't want them there. Jupiter Sabazius. Now, Valerius Maximus lived over 2,000 years ago. So this is prior to Christianity. So let that sink in. Let's continue. A very important Greek scholar named Diadora Siculus spent 30 years of his life researching the history of the world. He traveled to Egypt to retrieve as much information as he could. He wrote many books. Only about half of them survive today. However, there is enough in those books to open up the world to the story of the Chronides, as well as other books by other Greek scholars and various scholars of ancient mythology around the world. Let's look at some of the things that Diadora Siculus wrote. In his Library of History, he wrote, "And of the Greek writers of mythology, some give to Osiris the name Dionysus, or with a slight change in form, Sirius. One of them, Eumpalus, in his Bacchic hymn, speaks of our Dionysus shining like a star with fiery eye in every ray." So there you have it. Dionysus is Osiris. So now We have connected Egyptian mythology to Greek mythology and Greek mythology to Abrahamic religion. Let's look at what happened during the time of Osiris. Again, from Diadora Siculus' Library of History, he wrote, Osiris was the first they record to make mankind give up cannibalism, for after Isis had discovered the fruit of both wheat and barley, which grew wild over the land along with other plants but was still unknown to man, and Osiris had also devised the cultivation of these fruits, all men were glad to change their food, both because of the pleasing nature of the newly discovered grains, and because it seemed to their advantage to refrain from butchery of one another. So here we have a description of cannibalism going on during the time of these Chronides, which is exactly what the problem was from the Nephilim. But he also states it was even other humans doing it. Here is the timeline from Diadora Siculus' Library of History. The number of years from Osiris and Isis, they say, to the reign of Alexander, who founded the city which bears his name in Egypt, is over 10,000, but according to other writers, a little less than 23,000. Well, Alexander lived about 2,000 years ago, so add that on. We have a timeline of 12,000 to 25,000 years ago, which is the timeline of the Chronides. And as you will see, possibly the timeline after the second destruction of Atlantis and right before the final sinking known as the flood. Let's continue. Looking at some of the works of Helena Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, we find out who Satan is, and it's Prometheus. Here's what is written. Hence the allegory of Prometheus, who steals the divine fire so as to allow men to proceed consciously on the path of spiritual evolution, thus transforming the most perfect of animals on earth into a potential god and making him free to take the kingdom of heaven by violence. Hence also the curse pronounced by Zeus against Prometheus and by Jehovah El-Debaoth against his rebellious son Satan. Now, in other books of mine, I'll go into more detail proving out that Prometheus is the equivalent of the Egyptian Set, and he murdered Dionysus Osiris and thus gained the title of Satan. There is a difference between the devil and Satan, and you'll find out that the devil refers to Kronos because he was a human sacrificer of children. Moloch is Kronos, is Yahweh. Now, I know that's a bold statement, but if you take the time to look at what I've written in my books, you'll prove it out to yourself. You may go through several emotions of disbelief and anger, but after you take the time to listen and read and research, you'll understand basically how you have been lied to and had the wool pulled over your eyes, so to say. Now let's continue. Let's take a look at Nordic mythology and connect it to this Chronide family. From the Hemskringla, written by Snorri Sturluson, we learn this. Othin died in his bed in Sweden, but when he felt death approaching, he had himself marked with the point of a spear, and he declared as his own all men who fell in battle. He said he was about to depart to the abode of the gods and would there welcome his friends. So then the Swedes believed that he had gone to the old Asgard and would live there forever. Then the belief in Othin rose anew, and they called on him. Often the Swedes thought he revealed himself before great battles were fought, when he would give victory to some and invite others to come to his abode. Both fates seemed good to them. Othin was burned after his death, and this burning on the pyre of his body took place with great splendor. It was people's belief that the higher the smoke rose in the sky, the more elevated in heaven would he be who was cremated. And therefore a man was considered the nobler, the more possessions were burned with him. After him, North and Noatan took power among the Swedes and continued the sacrifices. So we have a mention of the Asgard. If we go to the Prose Edda, Gylfaginning, written by Snorri Sturluson, we'll learn that the location of the Asgard is Troy, which is where Zeus was, or was worshipped. Here is what was written. Next they made for themselves in the middle of the world a city which is called Asgard. Men call it Troy. So now we have just connected Nordic religion or mythology to Egyptian, to Greek, to Roman, and to Abrahamic religion. We can continue on. If you read the Dionysica, written by the Greek scholar Nonus, you will find out that Dionysus Osiris not only traveled the world, but did many military campaigns into India. He eventually conquered it and was accepted into their culture. So I'm going to read a little bit from these ancient scholars. This one's from Diadora Siculus' Library of History again. It states, Osiris also took an interest in hunting elephants, and everywhere left behind him inscribed pillars telling of his campaign. And he visited all the other nations of Asia as well, and crossed into Europe at the Hellespont. He also founded not a few cities in India, one of which he named Nysa, wishing to leave there a memorial of the city in Egypt where he had been reared. He also planted ivy in the Indian Nysa and throughout India, and those countries which border upon it. The plant to this day is still to be found only in this region, and many other signs of his stay he left in that country, which have led the Indians of a later time to lay claim to the god and say that he was by birth a native of India. So I've just showed you that he built a city in India, and it is my belief that he is Krishna, so it would currently be the lost city of Krishna that's under the water. And it was said to have a lot of gates. And he wanted to be a memorial to the city that he had built in Egypt. And if you look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there is a illustration of a area that has all kind of gates. So there you have a connection. And it's, as I just read, the Indian people have claimed him as their god and thought that he was from India. So we can continue on and on in these ancient books. I've just connected Hinduism. And in this photo of an ancient painting, you see a taller Dionysus fighting the Indians. It is a mosaic from the Palazzo Massimo at Rome. And next to him is his Maenad and one of the Indians, apparently on the ground, it looks like to me. Yeah, it looks like possibly a blondish person on the ground. We don't know who that is, if it was one of his people or not. So we've connected multiple mythologies to Abrahamic religion. So now I want to read one more passage from the Library of History from Diadora Siculus about Zeus. Here's what he wrote. Now the spirit they called, as we translate their expression, Zeus, and since he was the source of the spirit of life in animals, they considered him to be, in a sense, the father of all things. And they say that the most renowned of the Greek poets also agrees with this when he speaks of this God as the father of men and of gods. So there you have it. That's the Father God. Now, let's take a look at the fallen angel, Barakwel, and let's prove out how he is the equivalent of the Greek Iapetus. Here is a photograph of Iapetus with a sphere on his shoulders. He's always shown as holding the globe of the world on his shoulders as a punishment from Zeus. Let's read what was written about Iapetus. From Diadora Siculus's Library of History, he wrote, after the death of Hyperion, the myth relates, the kingdom was divided among the sons of Uranus, the most renowned of whom were Atlas and Cronus. Of these sons, Atlas received as his part the regions of the coast of the ocean, but he not only gave the name of Atlanteans to his peoples, but likewise called the greatest mountain in the land Atlas. They also say that he perfected the science of astrology and was the first to publish to mankind the doctrine of the sphere. And it was for this reason that the idea was held that the entire heavens were supported upon the shoulders of Atlas, the myth darkly hinting in the way at his discovery and description of the sphere. So Atlas is another name for Iapetus. And he perfected the science of astrology. The science of astrology was taught to the humans by the fallen angel Barakwel, who was also an angel of lightning. And lightning later became a symbol of Zeus. It was taken away from this fallen angel, fallen watcher, or fallen titan. Now I want to read a little bit from the history of the ancient world, the ancient fragments, written by Sanchonathan and translated out of the British Library. Some more information about the father of Zeus, who is Cronus. Let's see what he wrote. Sanchonathan wrote. But the auxiliaries of Elis, who is Cronus, were called Elohim. As it were, the allies of Cronus, they were so called after Cronus. And Cronus, having a son called Seditus, dispatched him with his own sword, because he held him in suspicion, and with his own hand deprived his son of life. And in like manner he cut off the head of his own daughter, so that all the gods were amazed at the mind of Cronus. So Cronus was a child killer. He human sacrificed children, and he is shown eating babies. Now, the followers of Cronus are Elohim. Elohim are the followers of Yahweh. So, the Abrahamic God, Yahweh, who is not the same as Jehovah, is Cronus. I want to read a little bit more about what Sanchonathan wrote about Cronus. He wrote, "After these events, Cronus builds a wall round about his habitation and founded Byblus, the first city of Phoenicia. Afterwards, Cronus, suspecting his own brother Atlas, by the advice of Hermes, threw him into a deep cavern in the earth and buried him. At this time, the descendants of the Dioscuri, having built some light and other more complete ships, put to sea, and being out over against Mount Cassius, there consecrated a temple." So Cronus ended up murdering his brother Iapetus and some of the people who were in ancient Tyre, you'll find that out, left in their ships. So they had capabilities to get in these ancient Phoenician ships and go places. You also notice that he was putting him into the earth, just as the fallen angels or fallen watchers were. If you continue to delve into these ancient Greek writers, you'll find out that calculated murder and calculated breeding were used extensively by these Atlanteans to take power. Another brother, Hyperion, was killed by Iapetus and Cronus because they were jealous of him, and the people liked Hyperion and they didn't want him to take power. That you could read about in some of my books. Now, as I've said, I've been studying these ancient books for quite a while, and I've looked at the books of Edgar Cayce and Helena Blavatsky and other so-called psychics and occultists or various other researchers. I could go on and on about the story of the Cronides, but for the sake of this documentary, I think you have enough. I just connected up the fallen angel watcher to Iapetus, who is a Greek titan, or was a Greek titan, who was eventually murdered. He was the teacher of astrology, just as the fallen angel Baraquel was. Now I want to talk a little bit about the legend of Atlantis and the earth changes. As I've been looking around for much of this history, you'll find, or I have found, that the earth is not what it was not really long ago. You'll find out that there's a fossil gap in Illinois and other places in the Midwest. There were no dinosaurs found. What was found were remnants of an ancient sea. Fossils can be found at various places in Wisconsin, Illinois, Ohio, and other places from this ancient sea. Shoemaker Reef, outside of Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, is a very good example of that. It's a fossilized reef that was found on some private property. Fossil Park in Ohio is another good example. A lot of trilobites and ancient sea life found there. Interestingly, in my readings of these ancient books, it was said that Egypt was underwater. It wasn't always above water. Here's what was written by Diadora Siculus. They say also that the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians, Osiris having been the leader of the colony. For speaking generally, that is now Egypt, they maintain, was not land, but sea, when in the beginning the universe was being formed. Afterwards, however, as the Nile, during the times of its inundation, carried down the mud from Ethiopia, land was gradually built up from this deposit. Also, the statement that all the land of the Egyptians is alluvial silt deposited by the river receives the clearest proof, in their opinion, from what takes place at the outlets of the Nile, for as each year new mud is continually gathered together at the mouths of the river, the sea is observed being thrust back by the deposited silt and the land receiving the increase. Now it's interesting because they did find an area in Egypt that had the skeletons of ancient whales, and some of these ancient whales had limbs, so it was the beginning of whatever the creature was prior to whales of today that was able to walk on land, going into the water or maybe being in the water. And then their body was fossilized in the desert of Egypt where there's no water. And one of the skeletons is called Basilosaurus. It's at the Wadi al-Hatan site, not far from Cairo. So there is a lot of fossil evidence that the land that we're on today wasn't always land but was underwater, which is very remnant of the tales of Atlantis, of land going down and other land coming up. Interestingly, Edgar Cayce wrote something about Atlantis, or at least gave a reading, and then his family wrote a book, Hugh Lynn Cayce, about what he said in one of his readings. And this I find interesting. It says, in the land now known as Utah or Nevada, when the first peoples were separated into groups as families, the entity developed much and gave much to the people who were to succeed in that land. And in the ruins are as found in the mounds and caves in the northwestern portion of New Mexico may be seen some of the drawings the entities then made some 10 million years ago. Now there's a lot of fossils out in Nevada and Montana of dinosaurs. So here Edgar Cayce is saying that Utah, Nevada, New Mexico is some of the oldest land on the planet, over millions of years ago. So that's also interesting that coincides with some things that have been found. But Atlantis was said to have been destroyed through the usage of technology. It created a pole shift, according to Cayce, and then several volcanic eruptions during the second destruction, and finally it sank. What's interesting is that it sank allegedly during the time of Zeus, and Zeus is Jehovah, who is associated with the flood. And if you continue to look into mythology, you'll learn about the Titanomachy, which is a war between the Titans and Zeus. What caused this war? Well, what you find out is that Zeus took over the rulership of the planet after Cronus had to go. Cronus had also defeated his father Uranus. He had murdered him because he was a horrible person as well. And Cronus was creating human sacrifice of children and just being an evil person to control the world. So Zeus had different ideas, and so they got rid of his father. He took over, and he basically made as many children as he could. He's cited with at least over 150 children in some sources, such as Wikipedia. He created children to create kingdoms and queendoms around the world and to teach humans how to live properly. And you'll find out that he was just pretty much everywhere. In the Hemskringla, they'll talk about him being up in Russia and Germany. He's given the title Zen for teaching people proper ways to live. He was all over Europe and in ancient Palestine. He was in Crete. He was all over the place. But he had created a bloodline, a shepherd's bloodline. And he created it by mating with his daughter, Persephone, whom he had with Demeter. Demeter was over in Italy with her own cults. And he had abducted his daughter, Persephone, and produced a son named Zagreus. Zagreus was supposed to be his successor. And Zagreus was a toddler when Zeus's wife Hera and the Titans plotted to murder him. And so when Zeus wasn't around, they snuck in and distracted the child with mirrors and butchered him, and then cannibalized Zagreus and left only his heart. You could read about this in my books to see the proof. After that, Zeus pretty much went insane. And from this situation, he went to war with the Titans, and it was called the Titanomachy. Now, somehow he had certain kind of weapons that would burn the land. I'm going to read a little bit from Hesiod's Theogony to show you what he did. Zeus no longer restrained his might, but now his heart was filled with wrath, and he revealed all his force from the sky and Olympus both. He came throwing a lightning flurry. The bolts flew thick with thunder and lightning from his massive hand, whirling a holy flame, one after another. The life-giving earth resounded in flames. The vast woods crackled loudly about. All the land and ocean streams and the barren sea were boiling. The hot blast enveloped the land-born Titans. The flame reached the upper brightness in its fury, although they were strong. The blazing glow of thunder and lightning blinded their eyes. The awful heat seized chasm, it seemed, for eyes to see and ears to hear the sound, just as if earth and the wide sky from above came together. For so great a noise would arise from the one fallen upon and the other falling down. Such a noise arose from the strife of clashing gods. The wind stirred up earthquake and dust and thunder and lightning and blazing lightning bolt, the weapons of great Zeus, and brought the shout and cry into the midst of both sides. A great din arose from fearful strife, and strength's work was revealed. Now Zeus is the winner of that war. Him and the Olympians beat these Titans, and they ruled the world afterwards. And if you continue into the mythology, you'll find that he went to war tracking down the bloodlines of these fallen Titans and exterminated them, and had his children do the same. It is said that he took the heart of Zagreus and created a potion and reincarnated him into Dionysus through Semele. And Dionysus did rise and rule and create Egypt's kingdom, the Osirian pharaohs. But we all know the story that Set became jealous and killed Osiris by trapping him in a coffin. And his wife went and found his body and continued on with their bloodline. Now Set is the same as Prometheus, and I proved that out in my books. You can pick those up and read it. He also had a bloodline, and they had red hair, because Set, Prometheus, had red hair. Eventually, the Setian pharaohs were forced out, and the two kingdoms were combined. But I don't believe that bloodline was exterminated. It went through the east into Polynesia and probably over into the Americas. There are symbols that I have found out in the desert in Nevada of a zodiac symbol, or the sun wheel, that match what is found all around the world. They have been found on the Winnemucca petroglyphs, the oldest petroglyphs in America, at least 14,000 years old. That's right in the time of the Cronides. Red-haired giants were said to have been present in the area and fought with the Paiute, but were exterminated eventually. Their mummies were found in that cave, but have been snatched up by various institutions, and those institutions have currently refused DNA testing. In the Americas as well, the Mound Culture, to me, looks to be another round of the Promethean bloodline, or Phoenicians, that came out of Phoenicia and settled all along the Mississippi. The Hamza appears on stone pallets in Alabama and elsewhere throughout the Mound Culture. There were red-haired people or giants mentioned in several Native American mythologies, such as the story of Redhorn. There was a red-haired female effigy pulled out of a mound in Georgia at Etowah, along with a Siberian-looking male with dark hair effigy. In Oahu, in Hawaii, there are stones called the Wizard Stones, attributed to ancient, tall, mysterious travelers that came to the Polynesians and taught them various medicines and other healing ways. They left those stones to be used in times of illnesses, to be called upon for help. I write about that as well. I actually visited those stones on Waikiki Beach. It is my opinion that the priestcraft of the Abrahamic religion know exactly who their God is, and they do know exactly what bloodline it goes back to. And they covet that knowledge and keep it hidden to keep people under control. But what they won't also tell you is how advanced scientifically these snow white or Caucasoid tall ancient gods and goddesses had. They won't tell you that they use genetic manipulation to create all humans. Every ancient mythology speaks of ancient gods and goddesses creating the human race. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. Everybody has a creation story. Connecting Sumerian mythology to Greek mythology via the story of Enki mating with his sister Ninhursag, creating a daughter, and then mating with the daughter, trying to create a son, is the same story as Zeus mating with Persephone. It is my opinion that Ereshkigal is the equivalent of Persephone. There is no Hades or Pluto. You'll find out through Sanchonathan that the child named Pluto was human sacrificed as a baby by his father Cronus in times of trouble. But you will also find out that Zeus is referred to as underground Hades, thus connecting all of the stories to Sumerian mythology. Enki is the equivalent of Zeus. Reading in Sumerian mythology, it gives great information about the creation of the human race or races via a goddess at first, and then via Enki, who creates the Adamic race. I will read some of this Sumerian mythology. What we learn from the tablets that were found at the Library of Ashurbanipal is that the gods could not handle the workload of digging out canals and rebuilding cities. And they revolted against Anu, who is Uranus, and Enlil, who is Cronus. And to keep the rebellion from going any further, they created a slave race, or a smaller version of themselves. They initially took one of the gods who had revolted and killed him and used his DNA to make the first humans. Here is what is written in the Atrahasis Tablet 1. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, he made a purification by washing. Geshtui, a god who had intelligence, they slaughtered in their assembly. Nintu mixed clay with his flesh and blood. They heard the drum beat forever after. A ghost came into existence from the god's flesh, and she, Nintu, proclaimed it as his living sign. The ghost existed so as not to forget the slain god. After she had mixed that clay, she called up the Anunnaki, the great gods, the Agigi, the great gods, spat spittle upon the clay. Mammy made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. I have carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I have relieved you of your hard work. I have imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I have undone the fetter and granted freedom. They listened to this speech of hers and were freed from their anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mammy, but now your name shall be mistress of all the gods. Now this mythology continues on and says that 600 years passed and they felt that there were too many humans and they tried to kill them through disease and pestilence and a flood. But there were humans that did survive and continue on. So now we have connected Sumerian mythology to all of the mythologies that I had mentioned. What is interesting to note is that in a lot of ancient art, the gods are always shown or as taller or bigger than the average human. What is also interesting is that in this Nag Hammadi library, they describe the demiurge as being androgynous. Now, this term of androgyny comes up quite a bit in a lot of ancient mythology and mystery schools. Specifically, Helena Blavatsky has divided the human race into 7 different phases. The 3rd was said to be hermaphroditic or androgynous. The 4th, the gender split. The 5th race is us. The 6th will be adepts, and the 7th as well. She describes the 3rd and 4th race as the Atlanteans. Now there are those that are equating these ancient gods and goddesses to the image of the gray alien. I do not believe that these ancient gods and goddesses were grays. In fact, you'll find out from the Dead Sea Scrolls that the angels, or these Chronides or Atlanteans, were making monsters. The monsters would be your hybrids or cryptids, like your Bigfoot, your Dogman or werewolf, your griffin, your harpy, your mermaids, and so forth. What I find interesting is the stories of abductees claim that they have to use test tubes and technology to produce themselves and other hybrids between a human and these grays. That has nothing to do with nature. Nature is binary, a male and a female. Whether anybody likes that fact or not, it's a fact. Nothing out of nature can survive or comes from nature if it needs a test tube to reproduce. And I'm not talking about people that have anomalies or issues with their reproduction. We're talking about an alleged underground species that has to use some sort of technology to survive and reproduce and live. Therefore, I believe if they do exist, they are the created monsters of old. There is a passage in the Dead Sea Scrolls that discusses how the giants and the monsters felt before the flood. Now, let me read it to you from the Book of Giants in the Dead Sea Scrolls. To Enoch, the noted scribe, and he will interpret for us the dream. Thereupon his fellow Oya declared and said to the giants, I too had a dream this night, O giants, and behold, the ruler of heaven came down to earth, and such is the end of the dream. Thereupon all the giants and monsters grew afraid and called Maweh. He came to them, and the giants pleaded with him and sent him to Enoch, the noted scribe. They said to him, Go to you that you have heard his voice. And he said to him, He will, and interpret the dreams, how long the giants have to live. So I just told you that there were giants and monsters before the flood. And people that study cryptids are starting to gather more and more evidence of Sasquatch and dogmen and UFOs in the sky. And more people are coming forward about being abducted by these reptilian type creatures. Quite honestly, looking at this description of these grays, I'd probably say they're the mermaids. They appear to be more of a combination of a dolphin or a beluga whale and a hominid than they do, to me, of a reptile. But they could be. There are, a lot of similarities. But look at some of the characteristics and the fact that no one sees them breathing, which could mean that they have a lung bladder, which is similar to dolphins and whales, and start to put the pieces together. So there was genetic engineering on a massive scale in the ancient world that not only created humans, but monsters. And it was done by these giant snow white or white Atlanteans. So what is the conclusion after all of this? It is my conclusion that this ancient race of Caucasoid tall humans had advanced a civilization. And I believe that that civilization was global. If you take a look at the United Nations map or image or symbol, look at how they have the rings around the world with a snake. I believe that these ancient Atlanteans ruled the world, and they had a advanced technology, including computers and medicine and flying craft. But I also think they had some kind of a transporter system, which is hinted at by fake doorways in ancient architecture and art. And I believe that they misapplied electromagnetic technology that disturbed the earth. Now, the earth is said to have a crystal in the center. So imagine if you continually bombard it with an electromagnetic signal. How long will it be before it begins to oscillate or vibrate out of control and create massive upheavals? We may be at that doorstep again with our technologies today. It is said that Atlantis was initially destroyed with a pole shift, and then again with volcanic eruptions. What is interesting is you'll find in the book of Enoch that the third and final destruction was not from the earth, but from Zeus, Jehovah, Enki, Odin, Dagda, and all his other names, from him. It came from floodwaters below. Let me read the passage to you to prove that. Here's what was written in the Ethiopian book of Enoch. After this he showed me the angels of punishment who are prepared to come and release all the power of the waters which are underground to become judgment and destruction unto all who live and dwell upon the earth. But the Lord of spirits gave an order to the angels who were on duty, and they should not raise the water enclosures, but guard them, for they were the angels who were in charge of the waters. So the bottom line is, this was anywhere from 12,000 to 25,000 years ago. We were created by an advanced civilization. We are their clones. Probably Caucasoid people are more of their DNA. However, everybody has their DNA. They may have combined animal genetics with us, or just simply manipulated the gene code to make us smaller than them and more controllable. And when they mated with humans, they created a hybrid or a taller human, and that taller human was the Nephilim if they abused humans. The god Zeus created specific hybrids of himself with humans to be shepherd kings. Their purpose was to guide and keep humans safe and to rule but not be cruel. That is the secret of the Nephilim. And there are bones of these Nephilim found all over. And if you read my book, Nephilim Revealed, I'll even tell you that they have been found in Lake County, Illinois, and all over the Americas and world. And those bones always seem to disappear. And we have to wonder why. If you read these ancient texts, that god Zeus, Jehovah, was determined to exterminate that bloodline or bloodlines of these evil Nephilim, and the bloodline of Cain, who was a human that murdered his brother, and the bloodline of Satan, who is Prometheus. And I would say that it's pretty much has happened, and those bones continually disappear, and the truth is never fully proven out. However, you can read all about it in my Hidden Human Story series. Now, I want to add one last thing. There is a plan for the human race after all of these bloodlines have pretty much been cleaned out. That plan is a final tribulation, which is probably happening right now today. And at the end, in the Bible, it says, at the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. Matthew 22:30. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. My interpretation of this is that there will be a certain number of humans left that are considered meek or just simple. They just live with nature. They just live life, and they will inherit the earth. They will live on the earth. There will be other humans that will be like the angels, meaning technologically advanced, but with a moral code. The angels in heaven with a moral code, and technologically advanced, and may have long lifespans. Now, as far as not marrying or being given in marriage. From what I gathered of these ancient gods and goddesses, they lived incredibly long lives and they had many mates throughout their life. Some had primary spouses, others didn't. And I would imagine if you live 3,000 years, it's probably not going to be a common thing that you're going to want to spend 3,000 years with one person. You're going to have many mates and many people that you go through your thousands of years of life with. That is my interpretation. It remains to be seen. But these people will have to be a righteous people, because the plan was to clean out the unrighteousness in these certain bloodlines that I already mentioned. Yet there will also be humans that are just living life as it is, and maybe they have a 100 to 120 year max lifespan, and that'll be just fine. And they will remain on the earth. The others will go out into heaven, meaning space travel and other things associated with a technologically advanced race. That is the end goal. In the Nag Hammadi Library, which is a Gnostic collection of writings, quite a bit is written about these ancient chronides. You'll find in my books that I have been able to prove out that the demiurge is Cronus. What is interesting is they do discuss the creation of humans, and what these creators were concerned of was that the Adam that they had created had intelligence and thought better than them and had a soul. But there is an interesting passage in the second treatise of the great Seth that describes how these creators laughed at Adam for his smallness. Let me read this to you. And then a voice of the Cosmo Creator came to the angels. I am God, and there is no other beside me. But I laughed joyfully when I examined his empty glory. But he went on to say, who is man? And the entire host of his angels who had seen Adam and his dwelling were laughing at his smallness. And thus did their Enoia come to be removed outside the majesty of the heaven, i.e. the man of truth, whose name they saw, since he is in a small dwelling palace, since they are small and senseless in their empty Enoia, namely their laughter. It was contagion for them. So they laughed at Adam or his race for being small. So there is another indication that these angels were large. So there you have it. The floodwaters came from what was below on the earth. They didn't come from rain, and there were enclosures or something that kept the floodwaters from going about the earth until the angels were told to release them. So Zeus caused the flood, as all mythology states that he did. I do think that I understand this being that is called Zeus and many other names. I think he witnessed the final destruction of his world and the loss of their technologically advanced society. And I think he was angry about it, and he saw the cruelty of his kind, even emanating from his own bloodline, and he was disgusted. His sister had created the human race, and he saw the cruelty in creating a slave race and the abuses that his kind did to them. I believe he knew that there was a soul, and he knew that his kind would have to reincarnate into these bodies that were created. And he knew that his kind had their time on the earth. It was over. So I believe he hijacked this creation of humans that his sister initially did, and he put his own genetics along with his sister's into the Adamic race, which is the white race. And he then chose various members or females of that race and created demigods to be the shepherd kings to guide and protect humans in their journey on here on this planet. He also inspired his own bloodline to hunt down whatever remnant was left of evil Nephilim, or the bloodline of Cain, or the bloodline of Prometheus. There may be some of it left today, but I don't think much is left. I think a lot of it died out when the conquistadors came over, but there may be some remnant of it left in the royal houses of the bloodlines that Zeus wanted to exterminate. I do believe that the human soul exists and that it is on a journey, and that it may come in various forms of bipedals on this planet. So I do believe we will all meet again, perhaps in this kind of a body or something else down the road. In the end, cruelty cannot be tolerated. Abuse of knowledge cannot be tolerated. And either way, you will pay with your karma, in my opinion, whether you destroy the planet and have to reap the repercussions of that, or you will be reincarnated into something that you may not like, or you will learn a lesson. So I do understand what he did and why he did it. The story of the Queen of Sheba was that she wanted to know a lot and who this god of the Semites was, and she was a very knowledgeable woman, and she looked hard to find him. For me personally, I do believe I have found who this god of this planet is, what he was about, and what he did. I'm not quite sure if he was fully mammalian or if his kind was more reptilian. I am kind of leaning more towards a reptilian with different teeth, elongated skulls, blue eyes, great height, intelligence, and some sort of mental telepathy capability, and ability to stun other humans or beings, such as what's done by dolphins in the ocean or other animals that are able to emanate some kind of a wave, electromagnetic wave, if you will, or ultrasound, or whatever it is that they do echolocation and use it to stun their prey or what have you. I do believe his kind had different capabilities than what humans have. And when him and his kind mixed with humans, some of that capability came with what was produced. And I do think that the priestcraft knew that. Thus they went out and they also hunted down those that may have had that capability. As I said before, You may go out and purchase my Hidden Human Story series books. I will have a book called Nephilim Revealed coming out that has a lot of detail about what was talked about in this documentary. That will be for sale. You may also find me online. I have a YouTube channel and several blogs. I do hope that you enjoyed this documentary. Thank you.